Hey everybody, it's Friday, March the 22nd, 2024. And this is How to Restart a Church, a spin-off podcast where I, Pastor Trey Comstock, and now back with me, faithfully, my friend and colleague, Pastor Emily Larson, talk about how to make church happen, or how to make church happen again. On this week's podcast, this is one of the ways this show happens, I went on the internet and I found this. This is a joke from Top Gear, from the Jeremy Clarkson iteration of Top Gear, where they would, open the news with, I went on the internet and I found this, then they would cut away and you would not see what Jeremy found, and then they would talk about the news. This is very much, I went on the internet and I found this. There was now a couple of weeks ago, it's been a while since we have recorded one of these. So back on March 2nd, so coming up on 3 weeks ago, actually, there was a AP News article that, So I'm a very fun and interesting person. One of the things I subscribe to on Twitter has been forever AP Newswires. I come out of a political science department, and that's the thing they make you do, is that you're up on the news. And so anyways, there was an AP News article, and I'll read you the headline. No twerking, no drinking, no smoking, but plenty of room for Jesus at this Christian nightclub. And it was like they wrote a headline for me. This is an article by Luis Andres Henao. I am probably spelling that wrong. Henao, probably. And Jesse Wardarski. Anyways, it is just like they wrote the headline for me. In Nashville, Tennessee, there is a Christian nightclub called the Cove. So points for even not a cringy name.
Right?
They didn't name it Mosaic like everybody else. It's the thing you name these things. It's not even a bad name. It's the one we've got. That's
it's the
good.
one that everyone's using. Yeah.
And so, the Cove is, it is what it says on the tin. It is a Christian, nightclub, founded by 7 young African-American men, guys in their 20s, graduated from college, and then kind of looked at the landscape of what would help them, essentially what would help them connect with God and others,
right?
And then did that. And I say the words Christian nightclub, and you are probably imagining, yeah, but it's going to be like cringy, right? Like it's going to be like somehow a lesser version of a nightclub. No.
That was kind of the picture that popped into. So I read part of the headline, but not all of it, to my husband, and he was like, "What are they doing? Like twerking for Jesus?" I said, "No twerking. That's one of the rules, right? That's the first line: is no twerking, no smoking, no drinking, but a lot of Jesus." And so he was like, "How does that even work?" So, I imagine a lot of people hear the phrase Christian nightclub and go, "How does that even work?"
Well, I don't know, but it's part of I think this is, I am not an expert in what makes nightclubs go. These guys are making it work. People are traveling thousands of miles to come to this. Sounds like they're only doing it once a month. They've been doing it for a few months, and every time it is drawing a crowd, and it is drawing a crowd that looks distinctly like a group of people that would be at a nightclub, right? The AP article really goes into the streetwear fashion that these people
wear, strobe lights, thick layers of smoke, but not smoke from cigarettes, like fog machine.
Like fog machine.
Fog machine smoke. Yeah.
I look at the pictures, and my nightclub going days were very brief. It was it was the late 2000s, and I was in my early 20s and living in Los Angeles. And I went to nightclubs, but we'll get to that story in a minute. So anyways, they have captured for folks who might actually go to a non-Christian nightclub are being drawn to a Christian nightclub, right? Like this does not look like, how do I put this nicely given that we fit this description? It is not some youth leader came up with what if we simulate a nightclub for our children, right? Which is what you say Christian nightclub, and that's where my head goes.
You think youth group 2.0, right? Like you think like, okay, what if we just did youth like we used to, but we did it for young adults?
Or there was Disciples of Christ. There was a church near me where I grew up that did like nightly or weekly Saturday night youth activities aimed at the community. And one of the things was a dance floor. And this was like my head, it's every week. I only got to go a couple of times. But my sense was like, this is where really cool people go. It says a lot about me in middle school. But this is where really cool people went. Really cool people got to go to this regularly, and I only got to go a couple of times. But one of the things that was there was a dance floor where you danced. But they had all kinds of rules about how close you could dance to your date. And
leave room for Jesus.
Leave room for Jesus.
Room for the Holy Spirit.
And that's where my head goes. Luckily, that is not where these guys' head went. These guys understand good nightclub, understand Jesus, and built like a pop-up nightclub that sounds like legitimately a fun nightclub time, as long as your fun nightclub time is about dancing and community and not about getting crunk and twerking.
Right. But it sounds like a place like I would actually want to go and be a part of. It sounds really neat. And like their CEO is 24. I love that it's this diverse group of, like the founders are like a Ivy League educated and financially.
Eric Diggs is the CEO. Yeah.
A social media manager, a musician. Like it's just this mix of people that decided they wanted to have real community. And so they built it. Right? Like so they built the kind of the community that they wanted, that they belonged to, which is fabulous.
And it takes, it is, I think what really, again, I had the same, I had the similar reaction to the headline issue. Was like, really? I got to read this. And then you read it and you go, these guys are geniuses.
Yes.
Because they have absolutely distilled. They understand what makes a good nightclub. They really seem to, right? Because again, you've got people in their 20s from all over coming to this. Like, it is not one of those like missed its core demographic. Nope.
Right.
Hitting its core demographic. And
100%.
They had a goal of starting out with like 1,000 social media followers before they launched. They had 10,000 essentially immediately. One of their guys is a social media expert. Certainly helps.
Right.
But again, that talks about being native to like emic to the demographic that they are trying to reach people they fundamentally understand, because they are trying to reach people that they are they are working within the grounds that they know. And this is part of how our here at Servants, like our our Spanish service is largely immigrant congregation.
Right.
Because it is led by immigrants, right? We didn't read a book and design research what do immigrants want.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So part of this is, I think, part of what makes this go and not cringy is it is people who are sitting back and going, what would I want from a religious experience that would actually I would feel at home in? And then they did that thing. And by the way, they also did that thing to a high degree of execution.
Yes. And I love that. I mean, it's the corniest line in the article, but I like it. It's proving that Christians can be cool and not corny, right? Like they actually pull it off, right? Like that's the thing that you kind of read that and go, I don't know about this, but they've actually pulled it out. Like people are actually enjoying real, genuine community. And we've talked a lot on this show about like like the villages, like, just creating community, finding your niche. What is it that you do well, and do it well for the kingdom of God, right? Like, it's not about reinventing or trying to go and do something that you aren't, right? It's about being
Right.
being your authentic self, and worshiping authentically with your community, making real community, within your wheelhouse. What is your wheelhouse? And for these guys, they seem to have found it.
I mean, they've absolutely. I mean, yes, that shines forth, right?
Hmm.
And it is connecting with, I'm skimming back through the article, which makes for terrible podcasting, but they've got, this 18-year-old person from, Grand Rapids, Michigan, that, had been, praying for like-minded friends. And then, the quote here is, I think joy and religion can go together, right? Like,
Yes.
that this, this is coming from folks that often church misses, and
Yes.
they are then reaching folks that often church misses. And
Yes.
they are doing so in a way that doesn't feel like it compromises anything on the faith values, right?
Right.
Because there's not a faith value against loud hip hop music. By the way, they're
Right.
only playing Christian hip hop. By the way,
Right.
Christian hip hop has come a long way in 20 years. I
Yes,
remember
it
the
has.
early days, and now it's very good. It was not always.
Not a lot to
It's,
choose from.
it's not a
Now
lot to
there is
choose
a
from.
plethora of
Right.
great hip hop and Christian rap out there, and Christian spoken word. There's all sorts of good stuff out there now.
Right. And so they are, again, like the lyrics are all Christian lyrics. They open with prayer before anything else, right? All of these, people largely in their late teens to late 20s praying together at a nightclub. In some cases traveling thousands of miles for this. And then like prayer groups are forming, and then also dancing is happening, and and the three rules are real, right? No twerking, no drinking, no smoking, right?
And like food trucks in the parking lot, like it's a whole vibe. It's a whole experience that you get to come and be a part of. Instead of potlucks, you've got food trucks, right? Like this is just a
Right, and
different
they're
kind
selling
of worship.
waters, sodas, energy drinks, right? Which I have shown can mess you up. But,
Hoodies, right? Hoodies and all sorts of stuff.
But like really awesome hoodies, right? It is
really cool ones that you'd actually want, right?
Streetwear fashion, nose piercings, tattoos, Air Jordans, all of these things. This is the thing that the AP writers really want to get across to you, that like, these people just look like normal club goers, because there is not actually a category of Christian and a category of entirely different people that are people interested in going to a cool nightclub.
Right.
This does
Those
bring
are
me
not
back
mutually exclusive things.
No, and it actually, my main nightclub going experience was with a group of committed Christians. So when I was this age, which was now a long time ago, because you keep reminding me I'm pushing 40. But back in my early 20s, I found myself 5,000 miles away from my spouse. I was living and working in Los Angeles, California. I was living in Venice Beach, and working in Compton. And I was there with Teacher America, and so I am surrounded by people all in their like early to mid 20s. And our main, we're in LA in our early to mid 20s, and so we go clubbing. And most of the people in my cohort were not Christian and not in long-term committed relationships. And so I found a group of folks that we called ourselves the Good Kids Club. And we were all mostly committed Christians and all in long-term relationships. And so we would go to the club to be social, and because it's, it's a fun environment.
But we would in LA.
But we would like hang out with each other at the club as an account, as just like something to do and an accountability function. And then we adopted the No Child Left Behind policy. This is very funny for a group of young teachers, where we would make sure that we would be far more sober than everybody else. And so we would make sure that everyone else got home at the end of the night. That like Jess Ports and I would run the cab stand.
No, we're all the designated DDs.
Yeah, none of us had cars, right? And so it was just like, and this is before Uber. This is '09, and so this is before Uber and Lyft, right? These are yellow cabs. We had yellow cab on speed dial on our, I had an iPhone by then, but like on our early smartphones, and we would get our folks into cabs and get them all home. And there was, one of our dear friends who would always be the hardest to get into a cab. And so she would ride with us and, fall asleep on someone's shoulder. But that was like my way of having a like Christian nightclub experience. And so frankly, when I was that age, shoot, I mean, I kind of want to go now.
I want to go now, and I'm not that age, right?
I'm not that age, but like certainly in like this answers the question of like, I love loud, and partly because my hearing's been damaged from years in loud environments. I love loud environments. I love energy. I don't need everything in my life to be a wildly sexualized environment. Just don't. Right. That's me, right? Yeah. I would have gone this would have worked on me 15 years ago. Holy cow.
Me too. My husband and I were trying to find a date night not that long ago. And he asked me, he was like, why don't we go dancing? And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. Where do we go as people who are pushing 40, right? We're older. If you don't want to swing dance with the boomers, then where do you go? Like if the highly sexualized, environment is not a thing you need, if you don't want to be somewhere surrounded by, 20-year-olds who are just getting drunk, then like where do you go? What do you do? And we actually had difficulty finding something. So when I saw this article, I was like, man, I wish that existed here.
Right.
Because we would go, right? This would be a great date night. Go dancing with my husband, go have fun with friends, and not worry about, alcohol, smoke, inhalation, all of those things. Like just have good community with fellow Christians.
Well, and it offers that opportunity. One of the things that club environment, why it's so good for the sex, is actually probably why it's really good for faith connections, because it brings down your stranger sociability, right? Yes. You're all physically together, physically closer than you are to normal humans. Mm-hmm. And that clearly is also facilitating the random prayer partners breaking out.
Right.
Which is
and
positive.
The release of endorphins and serotonin and all of the good things that you get when you dance.
And this is one of the great I was some boomer I was reading was shaking their fist at, back in my day we danced with the girls, now we're dancing to display to one another, and I'm like, yes we are. Here we are. Yes, dance as personal display. Fits perfectly into a Christian nightclub of we're just here to dance, man. This isn't even about, this is about the joy of movement.
Yes. Joy. Yeah. We forget that there should be joy, right? There are so many people who think church is so stuffy that they don't want to go. And it's because they've forgotten that church is supposed to be joyful. Our Christian community should be joyful. I mean, think of all the times that there's dancing in scripture, right?
Right.
People respond to the joy of God with dancing all the time. Well, and New Testament, right?
And this does the thing that you and I bang our head against, and I think that a lot of the conversation around church is banging its head against is, okay, so people are just not going to come in our buildings.
Right.
They're just not, because they don't know it's for them. And that's a lot on us. It's really easy to blame folks. Why don't they come? Well, we screwed up. We just screwed up for generations.
Yeah.
And again, I'm shocked I'm still here. I was talking to my barber about this. My barber and I talk about our faith lives. It's good. He's roughly the same age and come at faith from a similar perspective. But anyways, I'm shocked that I'm still here.
Right.
They're not going to come in our doors. And people detect cringe at a mile away, right?
Right.
And
cringe,
it's all defined inauthenticity, right? Folks detect inauthentic stuff a mile away. the hello fellow kids, right?
Yeah.
A mile away. And so this, because it's coming from folks who fundamentally understand what their own generation is looking for, understand what's good to a Gen Z about a nightclub,
Mm-hmm.
and then create it in such a way that maybe some people are just coming having a fun and less sexualized time, which itself is good, right? It's just creating a whole other space, you know. It's not even. This is ending up a screed against nightclubs, and I don't really mean it to be. It is. How do you create those spaces where you have an option to not, right? To be in a, have the like social fun. This is where, campus ministries used to plug in on college campuses, right? Like, how do you, but how do you do that in a way that is still legitimately fun? For me, this was a certain generation of Christian rock concert. Mm-hmm. Eventually, they became very sanitized and corporatized. But there was a time for me, my kind of mid to late teens into my early 20s, where this was the whole that like an audio adrenaline show would fill in my life. Or DC Talk, right? DC Talk, this just, shows my age, but I cannot undersell the degree to which hearing Jesus Freak for the first time did for me what the quote I read did for that young person, of like hearing Jesus Freak at like I was 15 maybe a little younger, but not much.
We were a little younger than that, yeah,
but I heard it later, like
cassette tapes.
So yeah, I heard it because my friend had pirated it. So pirated songs existed by the time I first heard Jesus Freak, which is not helpful. But so like 97 at the earliest. I like it was, oh my God, Christians can like, there are Christians who feel these, oh my God, right? Like,
yeah, Christians can sound like this. I remember that. So I vividly remember on the school bus on the way home in junior high, I was in 8th grade. A friend of mine had it on his, like, I guess it was a Walkman back then or something similar. Yeah,
Discman?
It had to have been.
Oh no, was it a cassette?
Discman? No, it was probably a Discman at that point. But yes, but he like started singing it out loud. And then so did the person next to him. And then so did the entire bus.
Oh my God.
We all joined in. Like, it was this collective moment of, oh yes, we all like this song and we can sing it because it's, school appropriate or whatever. Like,
Abilene sure was different than the John Cooper School in Houston.
Yeah. So yeah, Lincoln Middle School, driving home on the bus, and like we all sat and went, I know this too, but like we all had that moment of connection and community going, I believe this too. Wait, you feel this too? Like those lyrics, that's the kind of community that I feel like they have captured here.
Right.
That we are still trying to capture as a church. Just knowing that like these are your people, right? You belong. That idea that yes, you too also belong is the thing that we don't always get right.
We don't always get right. In part because a lot of us who don't quite fit in don't make it to the point of then trying to make a thing, right? And because, I'll tell you, it's a heavy lift, and shout outs to these guys for just doing it. And by the way, these guys are really savvy, right? They didn't build a nightclub. They're doing a pop-up nightclub once a month, right? They're not dealing in as a person who spent my week dealing in facilities. They're not dealing in facilities, right? They're dealing in social media and making a good Christian party.
Yes.
And so there's a real, like, these guys are, why I brought them on is just partly because this is a heck of a headline, but like partly I bring this on because these guys are smart, and there's a lot in this. Obviously, you and I are not going to go start a nightclub.
Right. It's not our niche.
It's not our niche.
Would not be authentic to us.
Right. But it is. So as we keep harping on it, it's like they have gotten the like, oh, they're doing the thing that's absolutely authentic to them. Mm-hmm. Okay. They are intentionally limiting scope to retain quality. Yes. Right? They didn't have it go well the first 2 times. Go, okay, now we do this every week and we're buying a club. Welcome to the Cove, the permanent location.
Right.
Maybe that's where that ends up. And I would love if that's the case. But they are focused in on the things that are right.
Yes.
And they have legitimately created a thing that appeals to people who would not necessarily cross the threshold of church or don't know that church can be like this.
Right. Or don't know that church is for them. And real ministry is happening in these pop-ups, in these places. I mean, there's real prayer happening. There's real, groups of people praying against things like suicidal thoughts. I mean, they have all sorts of great testimonies of look at the things that are happening because these 7 guys got together and created a really cool experience where you can come and be exactly who you are and be part of the body of Christ.
Well, and they're like any of these things, they're getting the criticisms and we could guess what the criticism, it's dancing, yeah. And A, they have, very clear ground rules. B, there's dancing in the Bible. We all need to grow up a little bit. Just need to grow up a little bit.
You don't have to call it a foot function. If you have a dance at your church, you can call it a dance.
Right. We can't just declare Christian values, the values of a previous generation. Mm-hmm. I think about this. So, if you follow the history of worship, guitars have been in worship longer than pipe organs.
Right.
And there was a time when traditional worship was a contemporizing move because people wanted something, it was a response to the down-home country worship, which I don't connect with either, but these are not judgments. It's just these are the evolution of trends. And the down-home country worship was the response to a different kind of formalized worship in the same way that contemporary worship as I know it was definitely a reaction to 3 decades of traditional is the way that God always meant it. And at the time, as a teenager, I didn't know any better. But now I understand that there was a time several decades before where traditional worship was itself a contemporizing movement.
Right. Getting back to the traditional worship.
Getting back to the liturgical
and we're almost
renewal.
Seeing that swing back now to that liturgical renewal of, that is now the hip new thing to do different.
And to dress liturgy up to church was a way of saying that we are no longer in a place where we have our jeans and homespun shirts. And so we will dress up because we can. But then that became the law, right? It's this constant whatever, right? And so let us not fall victim. Let us break this cycle. As we observe a nightclub that we are maybe not cool enough to attend, although aspirationally. And they'd probably be very nice, given this vibe, they'd be very nice to me.
They would. But let us remember that as we age, what we, Jesus freak is it's not contemporary anymore.
I don't think
let us remember that our contemporary is not contemporary anymore.
That's right. That's where I first learned that Gen Z is a thing. Was about that song. So I guess I was 27. No, I was 30. I was at Lexington, so I was 30. So it's the 30-year-old pastor took the high school youth to a concert. Newsboys were playing. And obviously at this point in history, Newsboys is essentially like a DC Talk retirement home. And And this is when God's Not Dead is the big song, which itself is kind of old now, but this was a while ago.
No longer contemporary.
Right, but so this is when it was super contemporary at this moment. And so, like, we're all hyped to hear God's Not Dead, and then the DC Talk alumni in Newsboys start doing Jesus Freak, and I lose it, right? I am stoked. Michael Tate is doing Jesus Freak. And my youth could not care less. Could not care less. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, this is what it was like when the aging rockers that trained me would talk to me about the Grateful Dead or whatever. Boomer act I don't care about. And I don't know why I'm picking on the Grateful Dead. I could not name a single Grateful Dead song, but that was just one of those, like, man, have you heard the Dead? No, man. Have you heard DC Talk? And then I'm, like, freaking out about DC Talk, about Jesus Freak specifically, the song that changed my life. And my youth don't even care. And that's healthy, right?
There was a generation split.
There was a generation. That's right. That's where I really first felt.
The generation, yeah.
Felt because when I was on college campuses, we were all millennials, right? Just some stripe of millennial, and then I'd been out of college for 5 years out of university for 5 years at that point, and a generational shift had happened, and so my folks in there, I guess they were like 16 at that point. My 16-year-olds just didn't care.
Nope.
And there was no way I was going to make them. So this nightclub gets it right, and there's a thing we can learn about fresh expressions is the cool term in Methodism right now. But in like making a thing that doesn't look like church, but is very much church, which is what this is. This is church.
Yeah.
This is church.
This is church. So redefining what you think of as church.
But it starts with an authenticity.
Yes.
Of like, I am often trying to make the church that I myself would go to. And I don't always make it. But that's one of my driving passions is I suspect that there are folks like me for whom a lot of church, even as it is in this moment, doesn't really work. I don't really connect with. I'm not going to have the experience you want me to have in those ways. Never have been that way. And so as we're all like in that brainstorming process, it seems to, certainly what this nightclub tells us is it goes back to what do you know?
Right.
And it also helps to then have interest in things outside of church.
Yes. Yes. Don't just live at the church or in the church.
Or have if you want to meet people who are not in church, maybe take an interest in things outside of church.
Yes.
Because
and then go be you. Go be church you. Somewhere else. Go be you and go be church somewhere else.
Yeah. That's as good a place as any to bring this one in for a landing. Thank you so much for joining us. Back to our kind of more regular format of how to restart a church. Although thank you to Reagan for what was like a 90-minute conversation that I split up over 2 weeks.
Fabulous.
It was great. We had a great time. If you have feedback or like stories of place where you found church outside of church, like this is one of those things that I think we need to talk that is going to be increasingly important. Is what is church outside of church? Email us thegoodnessofgodpod@gmail.com. That is thegoodnessofgodpod@gmail.com. This and everything else we do in the Servants Now Media Lab is made possible by a generous innovators grant by the Texas Annual Conference of the United Methodist Church. If you would like to support us, like, comment, subscribe, leave us 5-star reviews on Apple Podcast. All of that helps this stuff that we do go further. If you want more of what we do, facebook.com/servantsnow, youtube.com/servantsnow, and servantsnow.org on the internet. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord. We'll see you next time.